afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming from. My name is Rod. I'm the community choreographer of Pollinate Impact, and I'm joining all of you from Manila, Philippines. It's great to see a lot of you here come in for our session today on our makerspaces and our lessons from makerspaces and learning from how hardware innovations, how they're supporting hardware innovations within makerspaces. So we're really excited to have two very esteemed speakers here with us today, Tina and Richa. And if you've been to a Pollinate Impact session, you'd know that we always start with check-in questions. So we'll be doing that right now through our Mentimeters. So Tess, if you can please share our Menti for today.
Yeah, sure. Just a minute. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the call.
Thank you so much. All right, so Tess has posted on the chat the link to the Mentimeter. So if you can all click on the link and join us over there, and then she will be presenting the screen shortly so that we can all get to know each other before the session begins. All
Okay.
right, so our first question, which country are you joining us from? Oh, there's somebody from the Philippines. Hello. Kenya and South Africa. Hi there. So we have a kind of diverse group here already. Anyone else joining us from other parts of the world? Rwanda, welcome. All right, so if there are more people who would want to answer, please feel free. India, great. So we have different groups from different countries. Hi, everyone. Cote d'Ivoire, amazing. All right, Tess, let's go to the next question. Right, so next is we just want to know in terms of organization, what best describes your organization so that also we can kind of get a feel for our speakers right now who's in the room. So we have incubators and accelerators. We also have a community hub, which I'm guessing is a makerspace as well. And then we have a bit of incubators and accelerators here. Okay, great. So government representative, amazing. And then there's also an other. If you want to kind of introduce your organization through the chat, please go ahead. What kind of organization best describes you? But that's great. So we have kind of a widespread. So some incubators, some maker spaces here, and then other organizations as well. So welcome to our session. All right, next. When you think of makerspace, what words come to mind? Amazing. Thanks, Abello. So MLX Ventures is a venture studio. So that's the other, I think. You. Collaboration. Amazing. Innovation. Creativity. Capacity building. Hands-on 3D printers. Is that true, Richa and Tina? Are there a lot of 3D printers within the makerspace?
Yes.
Yes. All right, ideas. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So there's still some ideas coming through electronics, right? So thank you, Tess. Let's move on to the next question. All right. So for the maker spaces in the room or any community hubs that we have, including venture studios, which communities or user groups does your makerspace or maybe community hub primarily serve? So are these students, university, college students, hobbyists? So we have entrepreneurs and startups. All right. Incubators and accelerators, artists and designers, any of those. So there's a big group of people here who really serve the entrepreneur and startup user groups within their maker spaces. All right, so there are, I'm guessing some of these are because they answered that this is a mixed group within their community hub. So they cater to more than just one group, including students and local businesses and artists and designers. So that's very interesting. Thank you so much for answering the question. Let's move to the next. Okay, this is our last question, I promise. What are the top challenges when it comes to setting up makerspaces and its operations and maintenance? So for those who do want either to set up or have already set up makerspaces, what do you think are the top challenges when it comes to operating or maintaining a makerspace? Getting the right people in place. Very in line for what we are going to discuss today. Also, maintenance budget, of course, the budget to kind of maintain all the equipment and tools that you need for a makerspace. Financing, right? Same. So how to kind of finance what the tools that we have within the makerspace. Great. So there are a lot of questions and challenges in terms of the financial sustainability as well as the membership fees. Great. Happy to see these because these are things that we'll touch on a bit during the session. Yeah, getting the right people in the space. So that's amazing. Great. So for those who just joined, we have the mentee right now up on the link. If you still want to answer, please, we welcome you to still answer our mentee. There are 5 questions. Thank you so much for those who have already. Tess, thank you for sharing our mentee, and we'll go ahead and introduce our lovely speakers for today. All right, so thank you everyone again for answering our check-ins, and welcome again to the session, No Nonsense Advice on Accelerating Hardware Inventions, Lessons from Makerspaces. So today we're really exploring the role of makerspaces in driving hardware innovations and inventions in the region. So we want to understand kind of the role that makerspaces provide entrepreneurs in terms of access to tools, resources, equipment, and a collaborative community also in developing and iterating their product ideas. So we are very honored to be joined by 2 people who are part of Makerspaces, the Westerwell House and Makers Asylum. So I will give them the floor to introduce themselves. First, we'll like to introduce Tina. She will give Tina the floor, and then I'll give each of the floor. So Tina, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm Basani Anjo Martin, but everyone call me Tina. And I'm from Westerwelle Startup House, as Yet mentioned. I work in a makerspace as a makerspace manager. So I'll be happy to share my insights here, share my knowledge, exchange the tips with the makers, and yeah, we're gonna have an amazing session.
Great. Thank you so much, Tina. Richa, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm joining in from India. My name is Richa. I'm the director at Makers Asylum. We are a community makerspace. We started the space back in 2013. So it's been a decade of making and building the culture around making in India for us. It's one of the first community makerspaces in India. So it's been quite an interesting journey to see how we fit into the larger ecosystem. So I'll be really happy to share about all of that. My role at Makers Asylum is less of a maker, but more of sort of I don't know, coordinating the makers, I would say more largely, but I look after partnerships, business strategy, how does organizational sustainability work. So I come in from that kind of a perspective around makerspaces, but I'm also an engineer myself. I am an electronics engineer. I haven't made in a while, I must confess, but I do enable a lot of making at the space. So super excited to be here and chat with all of you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tina and Richa. Again, so honored to have you and so excited to hear about the tips and any of the experiences both of you had within the Makerspace community. So please take it away, Richa and Tina. I will give you the floor to take us through some of the tips that you have for us and any of the challenges that you'd want to bring up.
Sim, should I get going? What?
Sure, you can go ahead.
Okay, great. So I think while we were all sort of, discussing before this talk, what are the things that we should discuss about? I think a lot of things that came into the conversation was around, I think one of the main things that I thought, because we started much early on back in the day in 2013 when there were no makerspaces in India, one of the tips that we definitely wanted to sort of discuss that how do you make a place like this relevant to the community where it exists, right? In India, there has been a transition now over the many years of kind of seeing an influx around people wanting to build with their hands or building things themselves. But if you see historically in a place like this, it's always been around services. Somebody else builds for you, although we've all been makers for many years, but I think there's been a shift of kind of, the community to also as engineers, as problem solvers, to more focus on software rather than hardware. And especially when you sort of look at building with your own hands, that was also traditionally sort of seen as something that you not look up to, right? So it's been sort of a journey of kind of discovering the understanding of how do you kind of create a space to also understand how do you really be relevant to the community. So definitely finding that out for your spaces is a very important step in also establishing a makerspace or a community hub and what it really serves. So I think that would be one tip to kind of start with. And then I would also think about like, how do you build awareness about something like this for the community as well? So because at Makers Asylum, we kind of have a very diverse community, which I think a lot of community maker spaces around the world have. It's anywhere from teenagers to even like retired individuals who come to the space. So how can you be relevant to this kind of large spectrum of people is one thing, and how do you build awareness around them so that they get interested in kind of coming to the space as well is another big piece of how do you kind of become relevant. So I think one of the things that I would say that's important is that a lot of people, when they start business and organizations, a lot of people say that you need to have one target group as something that you address. But makerspaces are inherently a very diverse community hub. So how do you kind of like go away from that mindset to actually say that we can serve everybody and also build awareness for everybody is a big challenge, because that's not how businesses actually work, because you're kind of always looking at very targeted ways of approaching things. So I think that's that awareness building, and how do you break it down for everybody and make the culture truly showcase that culture to everybody is very important piece of awareness building. And I think that's something that I would possibly, pass it on to even, to kind of discuss when we go ahead. And also, I think makerspaces are very cultural hubs as well, where they are melting pot of people with diversity kind of coming in together. So how do you kind of be relevant for diverse people? How do you make it inclusive? How do you do all of those things really drives towards how your makerspace and how the community hub is perceived as well. So I think these are some of the starting questions, or I don't know, maybe tips to kind of like look at when you're looking at a community hub or a makerspaces, if you are thinking about creating one in your spaces. But those are some of my points, but maybe I'll pass it back on to Tina to also take it up in terms of what is her experience.
Thank you. On my end, as you mentioned, so for us, for us as a Vista Verde startup house, so to set up the makerspace was more like, we have so many incubator in Rwanda, but we didn't have more like a hands-on to support even the hardware ideas. So it was more question about how can we remove this gap from the makers as an entrepreneur or startup to make it happen. So they set up the makerspace with the tools, but also you have to think about the tools and how it's gonna support the, your target or your community you want to support. because there are some departments like what we have in the Makerspace. Normally, not many people use it, not because it's not needed, but the community, their needs, the support you want to give to them, it's quite different, the culture also. So you have also to think about the tools. And another thing I will add is to find a good machine to operate with the Makerspace, because sometimes when in terms of maintenance or issues, you could go off for the whole Makerspace, you know. I'll be saying to select the good tools. Also know your targets, know your vision. So if you say I'm gonna start the Makerspace without any vision or support you want to give to the makers specifically, it's gonna be vague, and then you don't know how to support your target. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Tina. Rich, I'd love to hear also about your experience in terms of Makers Asylum, in terms of developing like what you mentioned on like the culture and then the people that you'd want to be in the maker spaces. How was that experience like for Makers Asylum?
Yeah, sure. Like I was mentioning, we started a little early in the space. So back in 2013, there were no makerspaces in India, and they were, there was no cultural context around being a community hub and what it kind of like, really meant for the other people around to even use it, right? So when 2013, when we started the space, it honestly started off as an accident. My partner, Vaibhav, had just come back from Boston. He was doing his engineering. He was studying, he was at MIT with a startup, and he was actually building a eye diagnostic device, which was a physical hardware product at the time. So for him as an engineer as well, there was no place that he could actually go to actually iterate on the design of the product or like also, build it further, because in India, there were no spaces like these. So there was a little back room in his office where he used to do it himself, and instead of kind of giving it to service providers and things like that, because you miss out on the process, right? Which is the whole learning of, when you build hardware. So it was sort of this backroom situation where how it began, and one of the days the ceiling of his office fell down and broke all the furniture. So he called for a meetup for people to actually build furniture instead of buying furniture for this space. So that's how Makers Asylum originally started. So it did not start with any capex, that we put in. It started off with honestly like 5,000 rupees, Indian rupees, which is hardly anything. And that's how we kind of started. And then what we started thinking was that to build the community, how do you kind of really, what does it mean to kind of like really attract like-minded people, right? So when this meetup kind of came about, there were 5 people who showed up for pizzas and beers, and from there on, it kind of became like a more organic kind of word of mouth, where people then started seeing that, oh, hey, this is a community space where they like, making things. So people who resonated with the idea of being a maker, or the persona, like, you want to build stuff and make things, started coming to the space very organically. So we never marketed the space in the beginning, honestly. It was no marketing cost, no budget. Then we started seeing that at one point, there were about 30 people with 30 keys to the garage in Mumbai, where we had originally started the space. And then we started realizing that people do want a space like this, right? So then we started seeing a lot of footfall there. And then we were like, okay, we need more tools, because we need to, kind of like support more people who want to come to this space and learn. And so then we started actually finding frugal ways of how do you actually build a maker space. So a lot of people would put in infrastructure and then build people. We started with people, and then we started building infrastructure. So actually a lot of organizations were very kind enough to donate tools to us. There were old tools, there were new ones. Even the community around, people who did not use their tools actually donated it to us. We literally had free tools available for us for a long time to kind of like do it. Even right now at the asylum, after 10 years and 7-8 moves that we've done in the last 10 years, we still have people donating us a lot of equipment that they don't use. So we have hardly bought equipment ourselves, right? So these were some of the ways that in which we thought, because it's important to kind of like, we did not have money, but we had a vision, but we also had people. So how do you kind of utilize all the things that you have to actually push this forward? So in the last 10 years, I think some of these interventions which needed us to think differently about, creating a space like this, we've incorporated those. So you truly don't need money. You truly don't need, marketing. What you definitely need is passion and a true, real interest in creating a community, because communities don't build because of money or because of, equipment. They build because people feel that they need to be in that community space, because they feel that there's value in being in that community. So I think that's a little summary of how we kind of started and where it is now.
Yeah, thanks, Richa. That's so amazing seeing like the organic growth, like as you said, like the need was something that you saw, and then just getting people to collaborate, and from a smaller space, and now kind of expanding it from there, because you knew that somehow people did need a space to do this. It's amazing to see how that vision and that need kind of just met organically. So it's great to hear that experience from your end. Tina, I also wanted to ask you about the experience in terms of Vesterol House in Kigali. How was that like? Was it similar to Richa's experience, or did you have a different experience in terms of setting up the makerspace there?
Let's start for me. I joined the Makerspace in 2019. So I went there for the 3D printer workshop. So it was a 2-day training, and the Makerspace wasn't fully launched at the time, but the Vesta on the co-working space was ongoing. They have started implementing some program. There's some members in there, and they show us the Makerspace. They tell us, so we want to do this for the community. We want to do this and this, because it wasn't fully set up. And we was like a 2025 in training. I left after the presentation. I joined the Makers. He was by the time he was Bertie. I don't know if you know about him. So he was the Makerspace manager by the time. I told him, okay, I know I'm interested to do this, because I think like this space is amazing and I want to be part of it. It was like I'm free in this session, not to get the job because I wanted to be part of the makers. We had amazing 3D printer workshop, so I wanted to know about other machines. So he told me, oh yeah, you can come next week and we see what we can do. So on my end, and I went. The first challenge, he told me to deal with the sewing machines. For me, it was my first time. It was like, okay, you manage. There is internet, there is machine, make it happen, and then make sure like someone who bumps in, you create like a small description how the machine works. If someone doesn't know how to use this machine, will go with your instruction and then know how to use it. It was the first week challenge I've ever faced so far. So I went to see the machines and the whatever. But the time I was there was also set up other machine on the side. That's how I joined the makers, and I started as intern, coordinator. So for me, I stayed there because I was seeing something you can create. You can combine the two creation. Let's say if I create something from the laser and then do it in a textile, you can combine and create something good. Also, after like 3 months, there was a program called entrepreneurship program. So there was a entrepreneur that implement their ideas in the makerspace. Mainly was electronic, and my background, I did electronic. I support them. For me, that's how my journey to be in the makerspace. It's quite different with the lecture, but for me, that's how I joined the community of the makers, and yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you, Tina. So a very different experience, right? But also very interesting because it was kind of happenstance that you got to join the makerspace because of the 3D printing workshop, and then it got you interested to further like work in the makerspace, now being a manager. Which is an interesting also, I guess, challenge or concern within the makerspace community right now in terms of the talent, right? The access to talent who actually have the knowledge. You built up the knowledge to kind of get to know the machines and how to operate it. I wonder how that experience is like for both your ends, Tina and Richa, on how can we kind of either develop the talent or look for the talent that will be appropriate to be part of the makerspace, to be part of your maker spaces. So maybe I can start with Tina and then Richa next. So Tina, please go ahead.
I think the best way to look for I don't know, the talent or whatever in the makers. So I think you have to like what you do, first thing first. So let's say if I want to join the makers, even though you don't know how to use the machines, advanced tools they have, you have to be passionate about what you do, and also focus on one thing rather than doing all of things at the same time. Let's say for us, we do some kind of packages, like we do events to also tell people the makerspace is existing, some workshop for the tools we have and the ability to use the machine, different kind of creation you can make from those machines. I think that's one thing, and also to find the good people who will support you in your ideas. Some people doesn't understand even your idea when it comes to creation or starting new idea. Want to create something, but you have to find the people who is in your understandability to support you. I think that's it on my end.
Thanks, Tina. So it looks like it's a kind of blend of the desire to want to get to know and to be in the space already, and then also to be introduced in the ways that you were also, right? Like with workshops or events where they get to know how to operate these machines could already be kind of an opportunity to look for the talent, because you kind of see when people have the desire to want to know more and maybe even work in the maker space. So I think that's a great kind of strategy that people can use to attract more talent into the maker space. Richa, on your end, what has the experience been like?
Yeah, sure. So I think very similar. I think talent, makers in general are very exciting people. One, they're really passionate about what they do. And the other, they do have hard skills, right? Which they've built up over the years to kind of also create. I think one of the things that is very important to kind of look at is that how do you use a community that you have, also created in terms of actually utilizing that niche community to also come back and contribute to others and their learning journeys, right? So I think the maker culture is very circular. Like if you are passionate, if you know something, it's also important to share with other people so that, more people learn. So I think that sharing culture of, your skills with others and helping others learn is an incredible cycle and one of the key pillars of, building a maker community. Because I think for us, it's been only because of that we've been able to really get very, how would I say, not only talented, but also very passionate people who want to give back, right? There are certain kinds of people in the world who are very brilliant, but may not want to share. But the maker community in general are people who really want to share. I think the whole idea around open source culture, where you're also sharing projects with others and people building on top of it, is a very strong sense of the fact that it's about collaboration and not competition, right? And that, I think, in itself is a great way to look at how you can also fulfill your capacity and skill needs from the same community. So I think we've really tapped into our own community over the years to sort of use them into actually training more people, introducing the culture to more people, and building on that community further. Because I think the circular nature of this, this entire set of people is amazing, because once you learn and when you move into the journey, while you might be passionate, but when you learn something new and then actually share with something, you're actually building your knowledge base even better, because when you teach somebody, you actually reinforce your understanding of it. So you actually become better when you teach, right, in terms of even being a maker. So I think tapping into that whole community and the fact that they're passionate about sharing was one big key thing for us to also sustain and also build capacity as a space for us, for sure.
Right. Thank you, Richa. So kind of adding to what Tina said right now, it's more also about both the hard skills, but also creating that culture, that collaborative community where there's a sense of wanting to also give back or pay it forward what they've learned through the makerspace. And then there, it kind of creates a more sustainable way to have talent within the makerspace to teach new people who come in. And then in that way, then the new people can teach whoever now comes in. So it becomes that, that circular process where there's always people who are there that have the talent to teach whoever comes into the makerspace. That's a really interesting and great idea how, both culture and hard skills marry in this sense in the makerspace, and how it can be utilized here. So thank you both for sharing that. Maybe one of the things that we saw at the Menti earlier was about how, we kind of delved a little bit on the operating costs and how there's a little bit of a capex that's heavy at the start, especially when you need to buy these machines and everything. Maybe we can kind of talk about what the factors should be for people who want to create maker spaces, what they should consider while identifying the tools that they want to procure, anything that you'd want them to know, or tips when they're trying to select the tools if they're still beginning as a makerspace. Well, maybe we'll start with Richa and then Tina after. So Richa, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned earlier as well, I don't think so it's important to have CapEx to kind of build a makerspace. I think it's important to define what you want to do with that makerspace to start with. I think that's an important piece, because if it is to, say, for example, the makerspace is, we did have a focus around hardware design and sustainability as Makers Asylum as we grew along, but it was a very organic journey of discovering it. I don't think so we started with that vision. It was more like, we need a fun space, we need a creative space where we could meet exciting people ourselves. And I think that's how it originally started. And I think it still is like that, right? Where we want to meet more people so that we can learn better and things like that. And to make that happen, we're doing everything else around it, I guess. So I think it's important to kind of have that a little bit of a definition of what the space means to you and what you want to create in that space, even culturally or even in terms of hard skills that you want to provide. And if you know that these are the X number of hard skills that I want to definitely provide to the community around us, say, for example, it'd be 3D printing or laser cutting or wood shop or like a metal shop or whatever that you want to sort of mix together. I think from there on, I think the decision making for what you want to put in the space comes into play. But I think a space is not about the machines. It's more about the cultural context of what you want to do. So I don't think so people come to a space, like I said, like earlier as well, I don't think so people do come to a space for the machines. Yes, the machines can enable you into building certain kind of things for sure. If it's a hardware, if you want to incubate hardware startups who are really doing some advanced things, of course you will need machines. But I think people do come to a space because of the cultural pieces of what you're embedding in the space. So I feel that with little capex and a little bit of in terms of approaching it with some frugality and some innovation in terms of how you can get these machines is also important. Most of the large companies, especially the ones who really want people to use their machines creatively, they are ready to sponsor and give it even for free most times. Most of our equipment here, like I said, is free, donated by people and organizations. Like, for example, the entire woodworking workshop that we had originally also was funded by Bosch and Dremel. So they gave us all the machines for free because they wanted people to use it creatively. We have welding machines which were given to us because the welding company that gave it to us thought that it could be exciting. They wanted to see how these creative folks can actually use their machine in creative ways. So they could have a different perspective about their machines and things like that. So I think those conversations can really enable you to think frugally, because at the end of this day, also a makerspace is a frugal space, because we are, as a space, I think makerspaces across the world practice frugality. They practice, circularity. They practice repair, reuse, all the important pieces of sustainability. So when you're thinking about establishing or creating one as well, I think those aspects of frugality needs to be in the back of your head when you can, when you want to start a space like this as well.
Great. Thank you, Richa. So it's almost as important or even more important to think about the vision first and the culture. Who do we really want? What hard skills do we want to teach the market that we're trying to go for? And then even from there, connecting, like what you said, like it's so amazing how these companies actually gave these tools for free because people want to use them. So knowing this, then it can really save a lot on CapEx. And also, as you mentioned, thinking about how the values of frugality and sustainability and circularity is a really important factor when it comes to being a makerspace.
I wanted to add one more point.
Sure. Go ahead.
Also the space, like the physical space of what you need. So I wanted to add one more interesting thing, what we did at Makers Asylum, and I think that's really a lot of credit to Vaibhav on that, was the fact that in Mumbai, he got free spaces to actually start Makers Asylum. In Mumbai, the rents are heavy, like New York and London and things like that. To have that conversation and say that we want to build a space like this, can you give me space for free? So a lot of people thought that he was crazy because you can't get spaces for free. But we got spaces for free and very subsidized spaces to run Makerspaces for almost 5 years of our existence, which is half of the time of Makers Asylum. Now, of course, we pay rent and all of that kind of stuff. But in the beginning, a lot of people really bought into the vision and thought that it was so important. So they gave free space to us in a city like Mumbai, which is like expensive. So yeah, I just wanted to say that it's important to have those conversations to also, involve people in your vision, and that really helps.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like there's no harm in asking or trying to start a conversation about it, right? And then seeing like what you saw, that there are people who are actually willing to have to either subsidize or make the rent for free at the start. So great tip. Thank you, Richa. We'll go over to Tina. On your end, Tina, what was it like in terms of when starting or when identifying if there are tools or machines, or maybe same as Richa, is the culture what you feel like people should focus on when they're starting, and then tools and machines will come.
For me, I think most of it, Rachel said it. You have to know, you have to have the people first thing first, or you have to know your focus. So then the machine will come after. Let's say if I want to train the kids in robotics, so you will know this is my focus. I will do the training. Some parts they don't need to have the actual machine. they will need some some small parts like wood to play around. You can use even the existing like you know, some workshop without the machines. And if you feel like you wanted to do some kind of different setup for the makerspace, if you want to use it for commercial purpose or you want to use for entrepreneur support, it depends how you select your machines. So but if you want to do for your commercial, also selling some stuff or gifting stuff like that, you have to know first thing what you're gonna make. The same thing, well, your vision, what you wanna do, and after selecting that is to check if you can outsource also the material locally, because also this is important to have the machine that will be used, you know, you have the local raw material to get it easily without exporting every time you need to use the machine. Another thing I would say, the experience the same as lecture. Here I am in Belgium, so the makerspace I'm in, they set up the makerspace. They told the government they want to set up the makerspace, and they give us a space for free. But for starting, they didn't have anybody. And then the community, their community here, is the one who gave us the machine in here. So you bring the machine. If someone else wants to use it, it's okay. So they have a bunch of a different kind of tools, woodworking, electronics, you know, it's kind of so diverse here. So everybody brings what they have, the 3D printer. So if you want to use, so it's kind of supporting. I have one machine and the other one have another machine. So if I want to use either what, I will be able even to access the tools. So I think that's another way to work with your community. And then here it's really quite a different what we do in Rwanda, because for us we support entrepreneur into product development, prototyping. So here the community wants to learn to do their project, also exchange the knowledge as you know, we share on open sources. I think also Rachel mentioned that. Also, it's more getting amazing the makers how we exchange the knowledge via these open sources. So yeah.
Right. Thank you, Tina. So it seems like there's an agreement in terms of really investing in the people, getting the community there, because from there, it seems like what you mentioned about how there's a value of sharing now, the tools also. So it kind of comes with the creating of the vision of the makerspace. So from both ends, it seems that it's as important, or it's more important to a lot more of the time in creating the vision and investing in the people, and then the tools will kind of come one way or another. So through the people, or with talking to the companies, and then getting them also to invest. So it seems that that's the approach that works for both maker spaces here. Thank you. Maybe as we wind down to the last part of our session, I was curious also in terms of like maybe now sustaining, you know, we mentioned about sustainability of finance and also maybe business models as well. Curious to know about the how maybe maker spaces should be like. Is there a charge that, for example, for your experiences, do you charge? What are the roles of different partnerships? There was already a mention a bit, but maybe we can get into it a little bit. And then also just to tie it up, how do you measure also like the impact now of your maker spaces? Because it seems like it's a long-term game, right? Because people create these hardwares, it's a long process. What does the measure of impact look like for both of you? So we'll start with Tina and then we'll go to Richard.
So after defining your vision, the impact, so it will be easier it's just to see how your community is growing, what you have delivered in past few years. Let's say if you started, like for us, we started 5 years ago. So the impact you see on the way going, so it will be measurable, depend on the community you have in total. Let's say you have gained more people, creator, innovator in a space. Also the project you have been working on, is it on the market? Is it some school implementing them? You know, those kind of see how many school we have trained, how many people have been in a makerspace so far, and then how many people we have trained to use this kind of machine or materials. So it depends on the different variation of items, I would say. So community, I think comes first. And the second, the projects for impacting the community you have been working on. And also how many people have been able to gain the knowledge in the makerspace, and what are they doing right now? What's the project, how many projects you have been having in the makerspace, and is it something they are using out there, or it's just something you have slept on it and forget about it? So on our end, that's how we go with the impact. I don't know if I answer your question.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. Yeah, for sure. So it seems that it's like a multifold way of measuring the impact. So one is really, did we get people in the space? How many people did we get to kind of educate on how to use these tools and things like that? And then also now looking at the impact of that, what does that then translate to? Are the tools that they create in the market, is that something that has created impact in the larger community? So it seems to be in those two kind of buckets, right? Like, is the community growing? How many people have we invited into the makerspace? And then what has that impact then translated to in the larger community? So thanks, Tina. Thank you for answering. Richa, on your end, what is it like measuring both the impact, and then maybe if we can touch a little bit on the financial sustainability and
Yeah, sure. I can start with the financial bit, because I think what Tina said sort of summarizes, because impact for everyone is the way that you measure is different. It can be scale, it can be the depth of impact that you're creating. So it could be ways in which, so I'll come to the impact bit a little bit later, because I think Tina's got most of it covered. But just to go to the financial sustainability part of a makerspace, or just to sort of put perspective into that. So just for Makers Asylum, we are a social enterprise. So we run as a for-profit and a non-for-profit, both structures, where we're able to work in different ways with different people, because I think that was very important to us to kind of create in terms of how do you financially sustain independently. We're not funded or backed by anybody at the moment for the last 10 years, in the sense like a full funding backing from, for people. But the way that we are structured was that how can we create ways in which we could tap into different partnerships as well. So that's the reason why we've always been sort of designed in a manner that we are, for profit as well. And then we also create non-profit, inclusions as well. So that's how we are structured to kind of do it, because sustainability financially is very important. Most maker spaces, I think, in the world are inside an organization or are a cost center to an organization. So for example, funded by a university or inside a corporate organization, or like funded by a institutional body, I feel. There are lesser spaces like ours that are independent in terms of the financial sustainability of how do you create it. So for us, it was very important that how do you create more revenue streams and also support structures from different organizations to really build on that sustainability ourselves, because that was the one big key question or one of the key things that we needed to do in the past. So I think a couple of ways in which one can look at it is that how do you create B2C structures where people can pay for it, who can afford to pay for it, and then how do you create avenues in which you also make the place inclusive. So we always have an eye on if somebody can pay, how can a part of that can be passed it on to somebody who cannot afford a space like this, right? So that inclusion mindset needs to be from day one. And while somebody definitely can afford it, how do you create avenues and spaces like by scholarships, by invitations, by, sort of working with organizations that support inclusion also to create access to a space like this? Because our larger goal as Makers Asylum has always been that how many makers or how many people can you create, can you touch, who can see this culture and become part of this community, right? That's like the first big thing that you want to really do. So, and that cannot be biased. So how do you kind of create ways in which all kinds of people, all kinds of diverse people can really access the space? So I think that's one big thing. So B2C structures, then B2B partnerships are very important, where institutional organizations support certain pieces of the cost that they can, support, especially to either make it inclusive or subsidize it for people so that we're able to kind of get more people involved in educational programs, in open source projects. How do you sort of aid all of that? So B2B partnerships very key. We work with a lot of UN agencies, we work with a lot of universities, we work with a lot of big foundations, corporate organizations, all kinds of people to really make this happen, because we do have certain programs and open research projects where we need support to actually, create that inclusion as well. So that's another way to kind of look at it. And then, of course, building products yourself, right? For example, at the moment in the pandemic as well, one of the things that everybody thinks about when you think about a makerspace is that it's a physical space. In the pandemic, we had to reimagine ourselves as a virtual space. So how do you do that, right? And how do you create that access and the same experience? So we designed a lot of educational kits, which are now products which can be, scaled into production and manufacturing, for example, that goes to people's homes and you can still make and build stuff, right? So now we are in a position where we're sort of a virtual space, where virtual and a physical space. Conduit where people are able to, come and meet and, be in the space as well. So I think products, B2C, B2B kind of partnerships, all of that leads to that sustainability angle, because you have to constantly think about ways in which one needs to, build these revenue sources, but also grant sources in a manner that you can actually do things, right? So I would say that that's the little bit on the financial piece of it. And of course, the other bit of it, which is impact, like I said, is subjective. We, as Makers Asylum, we think about deep impact, where we're tracking everybody in our system as to what level of making that they're getting into. Has it transitioned their career? Has it sort of made them work at a makerspace? Has it also helped them kind of contribute to the community in certain ways? So there are various different measurements around the depth and the level of making that they're incorporating in their independent lives. And that's something that we like to sort of measure as impact as well, because I don't think so impact is only scale. I think that's a little bit of a misconception. So yeah, that's my answer.
Great. Thank you, Richa. Thank you for kind of painting a picture for us for the financial sustainability aspect. It seems that there's a lot of, I guess, innovation that also come to how makerspaces could become financially sustainable. So mixing both B2C and B2B really are kind of the ways for us to move forward with that kind of sustainability in mind, and also will impact how not just the breadth but also the depth of the impact that's created with the entrepreneurs and the community that we're able to create through this makerspace is also as important to see. So thank you for that. Thank you both, Tina and Richa, for such an enriching discussion so far. We'll move to our Q&A. We can take maybe 2 questions. I already one here in the chat box. Ariel was curious to hear if either of you partner or work with business incubators and accelerators. While they often offer support, they don't have the equipment to cross-pollination, pun intended, already have an area where you see potential for strong collaboration and connections. Maybe we can start with Tina and then Richa. Tina, do you currently work with incubators and accelerators? And is this something, if not, is this something that you see potential for collaboration in the future?
On our end, we haven't started to collaborate with the incubators. Sorry, excuse me. So it's something we are planning to start this year because there is a too much project going on supporting women, supporting environment, but they don't have this kind of makerspace to implement the ideas. So on our end is something we want to bring up on the board to start working with the SMEs, so we could provide the space, and also the idea is to bring up them in the makerspace, give them the basic knowledge so they can even make by themselves. So it's just a basic knowledge, but then you will have to do by your own. You don't need support to someone to supervise you, and it's something we have in our baskets this year.
Right.
So yeah.
Great. So there seems to be space. Amazing. Richa, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I think on that question, we've been collaborating with a lot of impact incubators, accelerators ourselves, because I think what we see ourselves is also a funnel generation of social innovation, social impact, social entrepreneurs in general, because through our programs, the educational work we do sort of build that funnel around the fact that somebody is going to become a startup or a social entrepreneur in the future, even an entrepreneur, even from a hardware tech space. Organically, also at Makers Asylum, we've had over 30 to 40 startups that have come out of the space organically because of the community and the access that they have. We ourselves are, I would say, sort of an incubator in a manner that we're enabling that hardware tech space in that way. So we ourselves see ourselves as that, that bit of the puzzle, but we definitely collaborate with a lot of impact accelerators and incubators to pass on certain funnels and special projects that have moved forward in our acceleration journey to a point where they can actually go forward and things like that. So yeah, we already do that quite a bit.
All right, amazing. That's amazing to hear. Thank you. There's one more question here about what is one recommendation then that you might give to like maybe other makerspaces or incubators and accelerators who support hardware innovations and inventions. So let's say it might be their first time, or they're not very familiar with the space yet. What would be one recommendation that you would give to them? So maybe we'll start with Richa and then Tina. So Richa, go ahead.
I think my only recommendation would be when anyone is looking at hardware, I think one of the things that I keep telling people, even when they're learning or even when they're making, is that you need to have patience, because hardware is not gonna, hardware requires time to build and to perfect, because it is a very product development is an iterative process in general, but hardware more so is requires patience and time to develop to something which is world-class, which is, which can be used by a lot of people, which has the intervention of design and things like that. So I think patience is very important. And also supporting hardware startups with the money that they need, because they need more than, the other kind of startups that they do. So I think it's important for people to also kind of really understand that aspect, because hardware is going to be, it's definitely, it's going to stay, right? We're not going to just become digital. It does require intervention with human, human beings in terms of, interacting with the digital space. So I think hardware is very key, and to support them, to have the patience to really enable them, because it does not, to have good startups come out of in the hardware space, you need time for them to develop. I can give you an example just to close it, is that the two incredible startups that have come out of Makers Asylum, now valued at over about $100 million each. And they're in the hardware tech space doing some cutting edge work from India in the hardware tech space. One is Quidditch Innovation Lab. These guys are into drone broadcasting for sports broadcasting. And they took 10 years to come to the point that they're actually doing some incredible work in the broadcasting space with drones, right? And drone, for them to kind of use that to come to the point. Now they're also designing a lot of AR, VR experience. They just did something with Apple recently, which is like, they actually have the ICC World Cup tournament, which is happening in the US right now, kind of have this experiential piece design on Apple. But for them to come to the point, 10 years, it required them to build capacity. They had to invest their own money. They were bootstrapped till a very long time before somebody gave them the money, right? And it took 10 years, but now they're doing some leading work in this space. There's another startup that came out of Makers Asylum. It's called the Orangewood Labs. These guys are into 6-axis robotics arm. They went to Y Combinator after Makers Asylum, and then they, now are actually doing some incredible manufacturing around 6-axis robots from India, right? So and it's been 10 years for them also, right? They started off as a furniture design company and then pivoted to becoming a robotics company. Can you imagine that, right? So they had to iterate and to kind of adapt. So I think that's one big advice that I would give to people when they think about hardware tech, for sure.
Thank you, Richa. So really understanding that with hardware tech, it's a long game. So it's supporting them financially also in whatever way throughout that journey. So as you said, 10 years is a long time. So understanding that if we're there to support these entrepreneurs, it's gonna take a while to actually see how these innovations can then become profitable. So thank you. Tina, on your end.
I would add on that something like you have to have the same ambition as a group. Let's say if you want to create a hardware solution, sometimes it's need different kind of department, that this one is doing this, that one doing that. So it's better you have the same ambition as let's just say, like it would take longer. So if you don't have the same ambition, is some company falls in between. And also you will have to be open to learn new skills in the meantime. Like if someone is not there for the moment, you can learn something new about what they're doing. So yeah, that's the point.
All right. Thank you, Tina. So being open to learning about really the context also of where these entrepreneurs are coming in, right? Because hardware is also, apart from it being a long game, it's a different game from maybe the other spaces where entrepreneurs are in. So being able to learn with them and also being flexible enough to to see where they're at, it's very important to help support them. So thank you. So thank you again, Tina and Richa, for joining us today. That was a lot of really golden nuggets from the conversation that our audience can I really appreciate both of your experiences for joining us today. So it seems that with makerspaces, it's really important. Like culture is one thing that's very important, and the people in the community is what makes the makerspace, more than the tools, more than the equipment that comes with it, but really the collaboration and the sharing that happens within the space is what makes the makerspace. So I'm really glad to have heard your experiences. right now, we will just launch a feedback form for everyone to please answer, to let us know how the session was. How did you find this session? We'd love to know your feedback, and we so that for our next sessions, we can also improve, see if this is something that we can also create as a series. Richa and Tina, if we can invite you again, in next sessions, if ever people want to know more about makerspaces. So we'd be glad to know through the feedback form. I hope that everyone is able to see our feedback form now, and we'll give some time to answer. So maybe while people are answering, Richa, Tina, any last words or final messages before we end our session? Maybe we can start with Tina and then Richa.
Was an amazing also to exchange with the makers, and I would love to see this more happening, because also to hear from the other side of the word. So it's quite good, good start. And if you have any idea to implement, to start, if you want to start the Makerspace, this is the right time. So go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tina. We're also so glad to have you. Richa?
What I would like to say is that the maker community, I think globally, is one of the most extremely diverse and exciting and passionate community. And I think more people can, be part of that, learn from it. I think it's important. I think makerspaces over the years have also been a little bit, under the radar, kind of doing their thing in their garage kind of stuff. So I feel that it's important for us to also reach out, and vice versa, so that there are more collaborative things that can happen, because the more diverse minds come together, makerspaces are exciting spaces to really bring your ideas to life, and you can really build things that matter, and really effectively, because there's so many exciting people and passionate people who are doing this without even the need for, wanting anything out of it. I think just for the fun of it, and because it's so amazing that the community is super exciting. So I would encourage all of you to check out a makerspace near you, wherever that you are in the world, and, meet the bakers and, collaborate with each other.
Amazing. Thank you so much again, Tina and Richa. We'll also share some of the things. So if you want to contribute to our tool library here at Pollinate, we would love to have you check out this link that I will be sharing now on the chat group. So please feel free to check out the toolkit. Here you go, the tool library, if you want to share, and also to know more about any of our future events, especially in July, which we have a few lined up for. You can follow us on our social media handles on LinkedIn. You can check out the YouTube. We'll be posting the recording of this session too very soon, and we will be sharing it also on our website. So thank you everyone for coming to today's session. Again,